Hello and welcome to episode 4.
.2. Okay. Cheers.
Cheers. Clink.
Clink. So it's been a minute
Yes.
since we recorded an episode.
This feels very weird.
It does. I feel a little bit out of sync. Like we had a good rhythm and routine going.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a few reasons we haven't. One of them being we both haven't had the mental capacity.
No, it's been a rough winter so far.
Yeah. And there will be a moment where we do talk about that. We're not going to spend this episode discussing it. So
No.
guess you'll have to
wait on that one.
Yeah, little tease. So our last episode, we talked a lot about our opinions, our very strong opinions on health insurance and how it has failed us, how the system is broken and it has failed us. I think it would be a good idea to talk about the second LTEC facility he was at before he went back to Metro for the third time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was at Metro healing from the hematoma and the brain bleeds and
the new stroke.
And his stroke and the insurance kicked him out of there into an LTEC facility. And from there, we were only there for
3 days.
3 days. Yeah.
Magic number 3 again.
Magic number. Let's talk a little bit about that day. On that particular morning, correct me if I'm wrong, it was a Saturday or a Sunday. So Anthony had slept overnight and I was going to take that day off and get some things done, and you were going to be joining him later in the afternoon along with some of our other family members. And Luke up until that point had not had any audible sounds that he had produced.
Yeah,
and so,
he was nonverbal at that point.
So I had gotten a call early in the morning from Anthony saying, hey, he's talking, but I'm not sure if this is a good thing. Something doesn't feel right about it. And he put it on speaker so that I could hear it fully, because I had already heard him and Luke in the background. And I wasn't sure what to think, honestly. I remember being very excited because it was, oh wow, his vocal cords work a lot more than we thought. But what is he trying to communicate? We weren't sure. And so Anthony had said that you were on your way. And I was only a few minutes away, so I said, all right, I'm coming. We got there around the same time. And we still just weren't sure what to think because Luke was not hooked up to any monitors. This facility was a lower level, so they had even less eyes and care on him.
Yeah, it was very much they never have seen anybody with his level of care there.
In that type of facility. And we'll get into that in another episode and talk a little bit more about that aspect. But when you and I were there, some of our other siblings came up and we didn't want to overstimulate Luke. We could tell that something was going on with him. We weren't too sure what. He had not had a good few days since he had been there, and the drop off there was not good. We could talk about that later, but you and I decided that, you know what, we need to get supplies for him anyhow. There's a medical supply company just down the road. So while they're visiting, we don't want too many people in the room. You and I are going to go get these medical supplies and kind of just
road trip.
Game plan for what we were going to need when we got home. And we were not gone very long, and we were just down the street. I was going to say 30, 40 minutes maybe. But Anthony, we had pretty much all, the three of us had been like, okay, this is not good what's coming from Luke. We're not sure what to do. But Anthony had said, you know, if we see this, this, or this, we're going to get him out of here. And so you and I went to get these supplies. And
we had just got back. All of the siblings are there. I think almost all of the siblings. So the room is full of people.
And our aunt.
Yes. And the room is full of people. It's full of stuff because we were just
still hadn't fully
settled. And he is making noise, tries to go say something, and then he leans up and throws up everywhere. And it's black.
It was bile.
It's black. And immediately I was like, this is not okay. I ran into the hallway, started screaming for a nurse. You hadn't even gotten back into the building yet.
No, I stepped out because we needed a towel because he had started acting like he was going to throw up and we didn't have anything.
In the room.
I went out. This place, now being home with him, I can say I understand more why towels are a hot commodity at these places and they're hard to find because I have to do about 6 loads of towels a day. You go through a lot.
Yeah.
But I could not find a towel, and one of the nurses told me to go around the corner on a cart and I would find them. I hadn't even taken 5 steps and I heard screaming and like the light blaring.
Yeah, and there was no nurses in the hallway. I could not find anybody. Had to run down to a nurse's station. There's nobody sitting there. There's somebody in a room. I was like, we need somebody to come into our brother's room. You need to come assess him or call 911 or something because something's not okay.
And thankfully, whoever the nurse in charge was on that shift came in. She looked terrified.
Yeah.
And you and Anthony were rattling stuff off. I immediately started packing some of Luke's belongings. And we all looked at her and we said, call 911. And she said, well, your insurance is not going to cover another ambulance ride, a 911 ride.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at you and Anthony and just thinking, so what the fuck now?
And there were no doctors there either because it's a weekend and there's no doctors in this entire facility.
But even during the week, there's not often doctors there.
No.
And so you and I talked to her a little bit in the hall and she said, no, I agree. He needs to be at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And originally it was, okay, he's got to go to the hospital right around the corner. And we said, no,
Nope.
Metro is the only place that he is going. The only way that we could get Luke there was to use a very specific ambulance service and they didn't do emergency calls.
Mm-hmm.
That was, how long was that? But while we had to wait for was that 2 hours?
Yeah. 2 or 3 hours.
Because we started packing everything up. Metro knew that he was coming. The facility he was at knew they wanted him out of there.
Mm-hmm.
They were terrified.
They were
knew
terrified from the moment he got there.
They were. I remember different staff coming in, aides, just people that we had interacted with over the last 3 days and all kind of assessing the situation and realizing how serious it was. And at the time we had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
We now have our strategy, our exit plan in place. We're waiting for the ambulance. You and I are packing up the room because at that point we had already decided there's no way in hell he's coming back here. He's not going to another facility.
No.
We are going to do everything we can to get him home next. I don't know how that's going to happen, but so we, like mad people, our siblings, some of them left. The rest of us started packing things up. And when I say packing things up, you guys, first of all, he just had so much stuff. And because one of us was living there at all times with him, wherever he went, we had a cabinet with snacks.
It was like a baby apartment.
Like a college dorm.
Yeah.
Everywhere he went. And so there were an absurd amount of things to pack up in a short amount of time. At this point, there's no tests. There's nothing to help assess him and what is actually going on inside of his body. It's just literally, let's get him back to Metro ER. And they knew he was coming, obviously. They were waiting for him. Now, before we go down that road, let's talk a little bit about Luke's incessant need to pull everything off.
Recently, I have gone through a lot of footage that we've taken and going back and listening to us talking in those videos. The focus is mainly on Luke, but you hear us in the background saying, don't pull that off, don't touch that, don't do that. He has an incessant need to pick at things, to pull things off.
Fidget. So he had a trach for a while.
Mm-hmm.
He pulled it out twice.
Yes.
And that is a very dangerous thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
It was when he was still on a ventilator. So he was still getting oxygen and things through it.
And the other thing, he would take off his leads anytime he was at a facility where he had leads on. And leads are If you've never been admitted to the hospital,
They're stickers that go on your chest
that
and they
monitor.
monitor your oxygen, your heart rate.
So they're just like stickers.
Mm.
And so he would pull those off, but pulling those
Constantly.
off would make the monitors go off. Obviously, that's just annoying. But so it was one of those where doctors and nurses would say, well, it's really good that he's getting agitated and he's showing that is a good sign for someone who's been through the trauma that he has. So yes, it was good, but that also meant that we really did have to watch him. And we were just firm in saying that we don't want him sedated anymore. That was some options of how to manage that was to sedate him. And
It's
that
very much the protocol
for a lot of facilities,
things.
not for Metro. Metro never suggested that. However,
They had alternatives.
but so he would have to wear mitts so that he could not touch and grab things.
When he was at Metro, his insurance wanted to transfer him to a lower level of care, the facility that he ended up being at when this happened. And these facilities, they don't do restraints. Mitts, they classify as a restraint. So they said, him coming here, he can't have mitts. He can't have any type of restraints.
They wouldn't even receive him, accept him as a patient if he was wearing them.
Unless he could go 24 hours without the mitts.
And so that was always one of those things where we knew
It was dangerous.
it was dangerous
to not have the mitts.
But hospital systems, no matter how wonderful they are, have policies in place that they have to follow. And staff can only do so much to accommodate
And
our
insurance
wishes
dictates so much.
and what they feel is best for the patient. Ultimately, it will always come down to the policies of the hospital and the relationships that they have with insurance. And it is what it is. And so at these facilities, he was not permitted to wear any type of mitt or have any type of restraint. And another reason that we had to be with him at all times, because we knew that we had to be the restraint.
Yeah.
And Luke is also very strong. And when he's agitated, he was even stronger. And so you and I, we haven't talked about this. There were times where he would physically hurt us.
Yeah.
Because he would be angry with us. And it wasn't
And he
him.
was still in a diminished level of consciousness where he was, I would say, minimally conscious.
He wasn't fully aware of what he was
And
doing.
it was coming out of the coma. There was a lot of agitation and anger and not knowing who we were, who he was. And there were times he would get really aggressive, and it was difficult to be there by yourself when he was in those moments, because there were times where he would grab you by the wrist and yank you across the bed, or punch you, or grab you and scratch you. And I have photos of bruises, and it was hard.
Especially from someone who would never have tolerated anyone hurting any of us physically or
No.
mentally. And that was the difficult part that, yeah, we haven't really shared that with a lot of people.
I haven't even thought about that in the longest time, because
Yes,
that feels like a lifetime ago.
Thankfully, he has moved past that stage. It was something initially that doctors told us that could be something that
Was just his personality now, because of where the injuries were in his brain. Messes with your personality. Your frontal lobe is your person and who you are.
and we definitely had that conversation, the three of us, of how would we take care of him at home if this continued, because he will hurt us.
Yeah.
He can overpower us easily, even if we're together.
Yeah.
And so thankfully that wasn't something that continued, and I'm grateful. But so he's en route to Metro, and it's you, Anthony, and I in the ER, and we're met once again with doctors who know us, because again, it's a trauma-focused hospital, and so the ER is connected to the wing that has the trauma and surgical ICUs. And a lot of the doctors have rotations in all of those parts of the hospital. So you do come across
The
all
same
of them.
faces.
Once they found out the cause, which I guess we should explain that. So the cause of him puking and some of the other symptoms that he was having was that he had an infection, and
caused by his peg tube being
dislodged
from his stomach. So it was pulled, but not all the way out of his skin. It was in between his stomach and the outside of his skin. So to us, it seemed like it was still in.
And I think, too, we need to explain a little bit. So when they first even told us there was an infection and what caused the infection, we knew the severity of what that meant, because just putting the peg tube into Luke was a very risky thing to do. So when Luke's spleen was removed, everything had to be moved around. All of his organs did. And because of the way that they had to remove his spleen and some of the damage that was done to the one kidney, his stomach had to be placed underneath his ribs. And so to even get the peg tube inserted into his stomach took a very skilled surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
And it was risky and it was difficult. But in order for a facility to even take Luke, there was a lot of these steps. Initially, he did not have the peg tube.
Mm-hmm.
And so facilities, the only way they would take him is if he had a peg tube. And that became problematic for Metro because the surgery itself to insert the peg tube into his stomach was difficult.
Yeah, they didn't know if they could do it originally.
So they paused it, and then when they came back to the table of that, they had their surgeon do it, and it was successful. However, they had never done a surgery like this because of where the stomach was. And so when that became dislodged, the three of us knew that that was a severe complication because just getting it in the first place was difficult. It had not been in for very long. I want to say that it had been maybe 3 weeks. So it was still freshly
placed. Because by the time that they went in for the emergency surgery, the hole in his stomach had already closed. Normally when you pull it out, there's a track that stays.
Correct.
And it was already closed.
We knew that, okay, there's now an infection because the peg tube got dislodged. They cannot fix the peg tube until they clear out the infection. However, because of the placement of everything and the location of the infection and scar tissue,
that posed a very great risk to him.
It was incredibly risky. And so they felt at the time, after consulting with their whole team of surgeons and all of the doctors that had oversaw Luke over all of his time there, so up to that point, had felt that maybe the best route would be a non-invasive surgery to remove the infection.
When they ended up looking at the scans, they said, no, he has to be.
So initially in the ER, they said, you know what, we're going to admit him back into the surgical ICU or the trauma ICU. We don't know yet, but that is the plan for at least now. We're going to kind of just watch him for the next 48 hours and see what we can do about this infection. We need to get him on multiple antibiotics and we need to get him stabilized because right now he is very unstable and we need to make sure that this is not going to cause another brain bleed or a stroke at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The plan was they were going to move in the direction of non-invasive. So at that point, I had said to the surgeon who had already had Luke multiple times, I'm going to stay overnight. They're going to go home. And he said, absolutely, that's fine. We went back to the whole, how am I going to get my stuff and some of the stuff that we need for Luke because the hospital's closed. So we had to figure out back routes to sneak some of that stuff into me. Yeah. Not to sneak, but to get
her stuff that she needed to spend the night.
And I had to meet them at a certain part of the building, but everything else was closed down, so I had to know my way to get back in. It was a whole fiasco. But so by the time I met them to get this stuff and I made my way back to the side of the building where Luke had been admitted, they were not yet ready for me to come back. And so I had all of this stuff, a substantial amount for one person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting in the tiny little waiting room that had, 2 chairs?
Yeah. Up
in this surgical waiting area. At this point, I want to say that it was also about 2 a.m. So you guys said, you know what, we're going to go get a couple hours sleep. We'll come back first thing in the morning or afternoon, because again, it was going to be a non-invasive surgery. By the time that they let me come back, I think it had been an hour. I had fallen asleep. I had one of Luke's stuffed animals with me. I had the backpack, and I had fallen asleep in the waiting room, sitting hunched over, and I woke up to the doctor tapping me, and I saw the look in his eyes, and he said, "May I sit down?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Your brother has taken a turn for the worse, and our non-invasive team is going to relook at things in an hour, but they don't think they can go the non-invasive route. But we're not ruling that out yet. We want to talk to a couple of other surgeons. We're just waiting for them to call us back." So I sent you guys a text. You guys had been like, okay, going to bed then. They let me come back. I was maybe in there for 15 minutes. I had gone to the bathroom, and I had like sat down on the little couch in the room, and all the monitors started going off. And at that point, I don't know, just walking into the room, it was different this time. And I don't know if it was because I didn't have you guys with me that time. I'm not really sure why, but I knew that we could lose him. And it was a very traumatic thing, going from getting the phone call that he was in the car accident, waiting to hear the surgery, because we were just waiting and waiting and waiting, that first surgery in New York.
Yeah.
To having the hematoma and brain bleeds and being faced with, we may lose him, but if we don't lose him, he may be a vegetable his whole life. He may not have a good quality of life. To him coming back so strong and being an unbelievable miracle, to coming right back to a point where he was critical. And every 20 minutes, there was a surgeon coming in and giving updates like, "Your brother's getting worse. We just did more labs. He's getting worse. The infection is spreading. We can't allow this to keep going. We cannot wait. And non-invasive is off the table. We need to call in all of these surgeons. This is going to be very complicated, very risky. We don't know if we can save him. And if we can, we don't know what his quality of life will be, because there's a good chance we may not be able to get this peg tube back in. And if he can't receive nutrition, there's only so much we can do." And all the while you're thinking in your head, but his insurance is going to want to kick him out of here, but he can't get out of here unless he has this specific peg tube, and if he has this peg tube, he's just going to pull it out again, but these facilities won't let him have the meds. And so every 30 minutes the monitors are going off that he is not doing well. And I just sat there staring at the floor, and there, all of a sudden, I saw in the floor a heart, and maybe we can share that on social media at some point, the significance of me seeing hearts and things. But I looked at that heart, and I threw up a prayer to our dad, and I said, "How many times do I have to be here begging to keep Luke here?" But that was the first time in the whole journey that I said, I can't be selfish. I don't want him to have a shitty life. And so if he's got to go, like, just take him now. He can't keep suffering how much he's gone through already. And in my head, I was coming up with scenarios of how I was going to tell the family, because I was the one that had to wake everybody up the first time to tell them that he was in the car accident. So it was 4:56 a.m. and in my phone I was writing a note of the script that I was going to call everybody with in the morning. And I kept texting you guys saying, okay, we're waiting for 4 more surgeons to arrive. before they can do this surgery. And you guys weren't responding, and that was very uncommon. And then I started calling you guys, and you weren't answering, and that was very uncommon.
Yeah, we fell asleep with our phones on silent, which is the last time that I've ever done that.
And I didn't want to make phone calls to any of our family because, again, they knew that he was back in the hospital. But I did not want to scare anybody with the phone call, and I texted the sisters, and I just said, SOS, like, I can't do this. I don't know that he's gonna come back from this one, and I really need you guys to come up here. And I kept trying to get a hold of you guys because I was also terrified. I could see that you guys were at home, but I could not get a hold of you, and so I found a way to, because of where you guys lived, I was able to get a hold of a neighbor to come.
Thankfully, my cousin lives downstairs, and she came upstairs, and we were awakened by a very loud banging on the walls, and our door was locked, so she had to bang on the door.
And so that was a whole fiasco in itself, and I remember you guys could not stop apologizing, but it was
so horrible.
It was really, it was the first time I had surrendered everything and saying, if Luke can't have a good life, don't make him keep suffering, because he cannot keep going to death's door. Like, he deserves so much more. And that surgery was so long. Our family all ended up coming into the hospital, and again, Metro was wonderful. In the SICU and TICU areas, no more than 2 people are allowed to be there for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But A, Luke was in surgery, and B, at that point they knew that we weren't going to be disruptive and that we would be respectful, but they allowed all of us to just be in his hospital room. And it was so big and stale and empty because his bed wasn't in there. But I don't remember much of the conversations that took place that day while we waited, because it was a surgery all day. If you hear background noise, he's literally
messing with his mitt. He's scratching the inside of it.
He wanted to go to bed early today, but he has headphones in, so he can't hear us right now. But yeah, so that was a very, I don't know, that was a point that I was on my knees, and I ended up seeing multiple hearts that whole day outside of his room window, on the floor, on the bed. I have all pictures I have taken of them, but throughout all of those hours, those were just indicators that, to me, from the supernatural, from my dad, that Luke was going to be okay. And when that surgeon, when she called me on my cell phone right as the surgery, I think they maybe had another 30 minutes to go, and she was the surgeon who put the peg tube in the first place, and she was the surgeon that they could not have even done that surgery without her. She was the most skilled, is what I was told. And so when it was her that called me and I heard her voice, I just started crying because I knew that it was good news. And she said, your brother did absolutely wonderful. There was a point where he was tanking, and then all of a sudden it was just boom, he's here, he's strong, he's fighting, let's do this.
Yeah, all of his numbers went up.
And it was just another miraculous thing. And they had said it's going to be touch and go for the next, 5 to 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be in critical condition. And the next day, he was back to minimally conscious, opening his eyes, moving around.
Interacting with us.
And it was one of those things that you were just completely awestruck of. How could you be continually met with death's door and challenges and things that should have taken you to heaven's gates, and yet here you are, still fighting through it, showing us that you're here. he's endured so much. And as we're recording this now, we're almost at the 9-month mark.
Yeah.
Are we?
Yeah.
We're at the 9-month mark. And all that he has endured in those 9 months is bullshit. But he continues
To amaze us.
and to rise above.
He is the strongest person I know and will ever know. He awes us every day with what he does, even when he's at his lowest and feels the worst, and shows up and does things that I couldn't do.
There's been people throughout this ordeal that, in just general conversation of asking, you know, how are you? People are hesitant to respond because whether they're having a wonderful day or they're having a difficult day, in comparison, they feel like they don't maybe have a right to say that they're having a hard time. And I never want people to feel that way. I think what they're in the middle of is valid and it is hard in its own way. And so it shouldn't be compared.
No, never.
However, how this has directly affected me, we've talked about it, that you and I have our own health challenges, but it is very sobering to be around him and to go through that footage. Like you said, we've been trying to go through all the content that we've taken from since day one and create videos to share with the world. And as we do that, we're realizing that we have been through so much and we have forgotten because we have to release things to make room for the current. But as we've gone back, it's really been this remarkable reminder to us of what he has overcome, what he's endured and should not have had to. But it has renewed my spirit of not wanting to waste a single thing, that this life is a gift. And none of this makes sense to me. I hope that it never does.
No.
But I'll be damned if I waste a single breath on things that don't matter anymore. And I am so grateful that I even get to be his sister and his friend and have the relationship that I have with him. And one of the things that I think sometimes we need the reminders of, I'm very grateful. So recently we had an appointment with one of his specialists, and the doctor, he was asking us questions, and we gave an answer. You did, and then I did, and we both did it in the past tense. And he called us out on it.
And he's like, don't do that.
He said, no, you stop it. We're not talking about past tense.
He can still do it. He will do it.
And I just remember being so thankful because this bubble we live in is hard, and there is so much of the way we look at things of saying before the accident, after the accident, and there is versions of Luke and all of us before, and we've had to lay them to rest as these new versions are being resurrected, and we're trying to write those stories of who our characters are. But just to have that beautiful reminder and from a doctor is a really nice thing.
Especially he's a neurologist and this is what he does, and he knows brains, and asked Luke some specific questions and Luke was very quick to answer, and he tilted his head and just kind of looked at him. He's like, you're still in there. You're still doing things. And I think he was taken aback by how fast he answered some things. Because he's still nonverbal, but he thumbs up for yes or middle finger for no. And the way he responded was, I don't know, it was something that I think we both needed to hear.
Yeah. Because again, in your bubble, you forget. And there are moments where when we are plugged back in and we're not disassociating, the grief is immense.
He just threw something off the bed.
Was it the bed? We can pause for a minute. Why does it sound like he's getting out of that bed?
It sounds like he's getting up out of the bed. Excuse me.
No, you can put the fucking foot back down.
Let's do it. So, I'm not sure where we left off. We had to step away for a moment. And
I have no idea. Sir was trying to get out of bed.
Literally get out of bed.
Yeah.
He
After we're
hasn't done
talking
that in a
about
while.
him being a badass and doing things, and he's now trying. Our new issue is him trying to get out of bed. Haven't had that one in a while. And he
really
awes
is.
us every day, and now he's awing us right now by trying to get out of bed.
Today is Wednesday. We had a really good Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
Yes.
Today has been a hard day.
Mm-hmm.
And he has not felt neurologically with it today. He has struggled.
He saved up all of his energy for now.
But let me tell you, you would not know it by... I said to her, and maybe I'll leave that part in, but I said, it sounds like he is getting out of bed. And
so I
she
ran in there.
ran, and sure enough,
He's trying to get out of the fucking bed. And if he didn't have that mitt on, I'm sure his ass would have grabbed the bar and pulled himself, because this guy
we
pulled
that-
himself up off the couch this week.
But that is part of his therapy. We do have him do these things, so
Which
there's-
is great.
But this is why he needs 24/7 care.
Yeah.
Because he likes to go big or go home, and we love that. We are here for it, but buddy, we
Not-
gotta be ready.
Not at 11:30 at night.
When he wanted to go to bed early, but he has anxiety.
The side rails are going up now. From now on.
He'll get them down. He can reach over. Because this is the thing we haven't added. He can take his mitt off, and does he do it all the time? No.
No, he does it for her.
And he throws that motherfucker at me. He rips off the Velcro. Let me go get the other mitt and show them.
Yeah. So for those of you watching and not listening, this is what the mitt looks like.
And we will put a picture on social media.
Yeah. I've been punched
Yes.
with the mitt, and it's just like a pillow, basically. But it velcros around the wrist, so he can't take it off.
Oh, but he can.
He can. He does it with his teeth,
And it's very cute.
where he wiggles it out, and then you can hear him scratching at it with his nails from the inside. That's what I hear all night.
So you may have heard it because he does fidget a lot. That's part of the brain injury. But even before the incident,
It's a picker.
he would be cooking, he'd be studying, and he was always fidgeting with a pen or his fingers, and so he is just a fidgeter. I do remember the first time, this is just funny, the first time that he had taken it off, it was for a nurse that did not work on that floor. She was just covering because they were short, and I came in and never had met her before, and she said, let me tell you what, your brother terrified me. I came in onto shift, just coming in here to give him his meds, and she said his eyes opened, and again at this point he's minimally conscious, and when his eyes would open he wasn't always present.
Yeah.
And we've explained that a little bit, but she said that he looked right into her soul, scared the crap out of her, and then very slowly he's looking at her, and he takes his teeth and he slowly pulls the Velcro back with his teeth as he's looking at her in the eyes, and then
Scaring the
takes the
shit
mitt off
out of
and
this
throws
nurse.
it. And she said she has never been more terrified. And she had one of the male aides come in and put the mitt back on him. And so that just was very funny. And he has done that to me, I think 3 or 4 times since we've been home. And I usually wake up to it being thrown at me because we sleep next to him on the floor. And so
Yeah.
I
I've never
might
gotten
sit him
the
in the
mitt
face.
thrown at me yet. It's only been his dinosaur or most recently the Care Bear.
yeah.
I just woke up and it was on my face. I'm like, okay. Don't know when you threw that at me, but thanks.
The other thing I did want to say too, so when he became audible, he's moving
He
off
just
the bed
threw
again.
his foot off the bed again. Just gonna hear it clanking against something.
I do feel bad because he is having a lot of anxiety right now. And some of his medication protocol has been, we're moving puzzle pieces around to see if we can help him manage some of the things that are going on within his brain right now. And it's just, he's got to still adjust to some things. So going back to when Anthony called me with Luke making that audible noise,
Yes.
as that those 24 hours went on, it became clearer what he was saying. He was saying ow, he was screaming out in pain, and that was torturous because once he was admitted back into Metro and he continued to go downhill and become more critical, the ows got louder, and it was just so hard to sit in that room and listening to him cry out in pain.
Yeah.
And they
he
were
would say, ow, pain, help.
help. He would scream out help, and
After not hearing his voice for
4 months.
Yeah.
3 months.
And then that's all we've gotten.
And it was so hard because they were doing everything in their power to stop the infection, to manage his pain without sedating him. There were so many factors at play and things that they had to take into consideration. And so it was very hard, but I just, I remember my journal entries. I just kept going back to my journal and writing because I needed an outlet. And I just kept saying, oh my gosh, all he keeps saying is, ow, help me. And that was absolutely horrible. So he's come a long way. And after that incident, that is when his phenomenal doctor said, no, he cannot afford to go anywhere else. We need to keep him here until we can get him home with you guys. And we've got some things we've got to figure out and do to make that happen. And so that was the turning point, but it was very traumatic. Every step of this has been traumatic in its own way. And there's so much that we have not shared just because it's too much to share sometimes. But I think that anyone that has a special needs family member or again is a caregiver, especially to someone with complex needs, it is hard, and I will always have a special place in my heart for you. And I really do think about other people in our positions and in Luke's position
All the time.
And I'm constantly holding that space and sending love and energy to you because this is the most difficult thing in life.
It really is. He's worth it.
He's absolutely worth it. And I, every day, learned so much from him about life, about love, about myself.
Yeah.
But I did not know the true meaning of love until all of this. So, yeah, it's been a lesson.
Yeah. There's different types of love.
Yeah. And this is the type that I want to give and I want to receive. That unconditional love, and
that not many people understand or capable of giving.
Yeah. Once again, just to all of the people that have been alongside us in our community, whether you're close to us or you've never met us, thank you.
We love you.
Yeah,
we appreciate you.
We do so much, and those aren't empty words. We mean that from the bottom of our heart. And not a day goes by that we don't look at each other and just express that gratitude and throw it up into the air of, we would not be able to be doing this without so many people. And to all of the medical community that literally saved our brother's life over and over again, and ours, and just spoke life into us when we needed it most. I don't know that there's ever words that we can use to convey our sincere gratitude.
Nothing could ever be enough for everything that they've done for us.
Yeah. We recently found out that someone from Metro, more than one, are listening to the podcast.
Hello, Metro.
I know that some of them creep, which we're glad because we want them to know what's going on with Luke. But I looked at you and I said, I'm surprised that they remember us. And you looked at me like, come on, are you kidding?
I don't think they're going to forget us.
But likewise,
hopefully it's in a good way.
Yeah. But we will never forget any of you. There is not one of you at any Metro facility that we came across. And I'm talking even to the front desk people, to the door greeter, to the security, to the elevator helper. I'm not sure what your exact titles are. To the custodians. Every single one of you made an impact in our life in a good way. And if you're someone that was at one of the facilities that wasn't Metro and came across us, some of you we never want to see again. Some of you we believe should not even be in this profession, but there were some of you that were also shining lights in darkness, and
Yes.
we appreciate you, and we have taken every part of this, whether good or bad, and we're making something out of it. And who knows if this podcast is helping anyone or causing cringe fest galore, but I am glad that we're doing it. And yeah, just thank you for being alongside us and
Being a part of Luke's journey.
yeah, we cannot wait to have him sitting here
Yeah, on the
speaking into
podcast.
the microphone, because he will be. I briefly mentioned it in another episode as well, but Luke doing the podcast has been difficult for me. I bounced everything off of him, and I'm not a tech savvy person, and there was so many things that he had to help me figure out and guide me and instruct me on, and not having him has been hard because I never thought I'd pick up podcasting again. So having you has been nice. I still grieve not having him, but I know that he supports this, and he's cheering us on, and he will be part of this.
Yes.
And even if we take a break and we're not recording episodes anymore, you better believe that as soon as he's ready, there will be episodes galore.
Yes.
I would not be surprised if we were not permitted to speak, and it's just him. I cannot promise that moving forward any of the episodes will be any more organized with our thoughts or our conversations. We jump down rabbit holes every few seconds. We're in a
Yes.
new one.
Oh no, I think it's still good. People want to know the tea.
Well, and again, so much has happened and so much that we haven't shared, we've kept close to the vest.
Mm-hmm.
And there are even things that we realize, oh wow, we didn't even share this with a sibling.
Mhm.
Or like, does mom even know about this? Because it's not that we're keeping things, it's just there's so much that happens in a day, and time moves so fast.
Yeah,
That-
and we're on to the next thing, and sorry if you're not here to...
Yeah. I mean, what time is it right now? And
Bear
I haven't
witness.
even put away all of dinner yet. Yeah.
It's almost midnight.
It's almost
Yeah.
midnight and I haven't put away dinner yet.
My tea has a quote.
Oh, you have a quote. Let's hear your quote.
Journey of 1,000 miles starts with a first step.
As he's trying to get out of bed
Yes.
with one foot. So on that beautiful note, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks for listening.
3, 2, 1, 0.
The Mushy Pod is co-hosted by Kristina Irene and Nicole Alyssa. Theme song is Discovery by Zaz Melomania. If you enjoy our podcast and want to support us, there are several ways you can help. You can contribute to our GoFundMe page to assist with our living expenses, as we've stepped away from our jobs to care for Luke and are currently a no-income household. Alternatively, you can send items from our Amazon wish list, including out-of-pocket essential supplies and tools for Luke. You can find these links to those sites by visiting our MushyPod linktree. You can connect with us on Instagram and YouTube at TheMooshyPod, and on TikTok at the.mushy.pod. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share our podcast with someone you think would love it. Thanks for listening.